I'm really concerned with truth as close as we can determine it to be. And when you have something that distorts or screens the truth of a detail in an experience, then I consider that a deception. Can I give a more in-depth answer then, for instance, about a different kind of screen memory that may seem deceptive but harmless? In one case, a 10-year-old boy and his 56-year-old grandmother were abducted. And after they were given the green liquid, the grandmother was placed on an inclining table and restrained, and a reptilian was in, there were other kinds there too, but a reptilian alien was involved and approached her and began to try to copulate with her. She fought this very strongly and said no, she had never had sex with anyone but her husband. She never would, and he was dead, had been dead 6 years. The reptilian being backed away from the woman, exited the room momentarily. When he returned, there was her dead husband. And the dead husband was brought up to her to have sex with her. She was then in the altered state that the green liquid seemed to have produced, and she accepted him initially. Before logic fought back through this altered state she was put into, until she could realize it could not be her husband because he had indeed been dead for 6 years. So again, a screen or deceptive device was used to gain what they wanted from her, which was the sex act. And since she was strong enough to fight even under the kind of duress she was put under against the reptilian, they deceived her initially into thinking therefore she was having sex with the husband, because that's who she said the only person she would have sex with would be. We don't know exactly what they're doing with our reproductive material and physical samples that they're taking from us, and they've given at least two implied and explicit explanations for this. One is, of course, the crossbreeding alien-human race that they're supposedly coming up with. They tell us that, and they show us that, but again, they can be deceptive in what they show us, so we can't take that as proof. They have also shown and told other abductees that the reproductive material they take from us, including the fetuses, as well as the sperm and ova, are used to make their biological robots, all those little brains you see running around, the ones that most of you encounter. According to some of the things that the ETs have told their abductees, those are not ETs. Those are robots, and they're made strictly from human material. The ETs are the ones in charge of them. So they're taking our fetuses and our babies, perhaps, and making the workers that they send out in the field to do most of the dirty work. Is this true or not? We don't have verification.
Now, I'm glad that Dr. Turner brought up the reptilians. It's the same people that I have known, I was maybe with. I have many people who have told me, some of them from first-hand experience, that this is the very group that Dr. Boylan has investigated and looking into, that have had some kind of collaborative efforts with the U.S. government. This seems pretty sinister, and many people won't believe that. And I'm not sure whether I believe it at all. But that is the group. That is the group that's been associated with the Area 51 government operation. Not necessarily very good people at all.
Okay, your question, Jim. Dr. Turner, would you like to comment on the message being given?
Yes, many of the people in the cases that we've collected have been told they have a mission or a job or a task they're going to have to perform, and the time limit does vary somewhat, so it makes it very hard to know what aspect it is to believe, but many have been told by 1993 they will be switched on to do their jobs. They won't have a choice about it. They will be where they're supposed to be, and they will do what they're supposed to do, not to worry about it. But they won't tell them what the job is going to be. Also, several cases have been told that their mission, or that there is going to be a rescue, if you will, and I really use that term sarcastically, of a certain number of humans that will be removed either from this planet to another planet or to some facility, in order for the earth to be purged and cleansed. And I think that's a real nice way to put it. We're talking about destroying it, basically, what we have on it. For whatever reason, we ruined it, or there's too many of us for them to deal with, or whatever the situation is. And they vary from person to person. Some have been told that they'll rescue 12,000. Some have been told they'll rescue 1.3 million. It really does vary, so it's hard to know what to believe about that. But they do give these numbers, specific numbers of people who will be rescued. And then we will either be returned to the planet once it's all put back together, or will be put on some other kind of planet. And several have been told that they're growing new bodies for us. Those sorts of messages.
Dr. Muir, your question.
Yes, how many of you have had cases in which the abductees have reported being taken not to a ship facility but to an underground facility?
Recently, there have been a couple of cases in California, only this past year, have I heard of this picture, and I have tried to establish whether it was a musty odor that these people were reporting, or whether it was just some screen memory for a room. I haven't really been sure about that. And there have been many suggestions that some of their hiding places are under the oceans, which would make a very good place to store things. You didn't want the U.S. airports to be bombed.
Dr. Turner, at this point, I want to put the question back to you, if I may. Your experience, what has been reported vis-a-vis underground facilities and people being abducted?
Yeah, we've had perhaps in the last 4 years, maybe 9 cases that have reported being taken into rather large underground facilities. And these are totally unrelated to each other. The cases do not know each other. They're often from different states or are widely diverse geographically. They've described almost identical details about the entrances, about the setup of what goes on in certain areas, and storage areas, processing areas, and so on. And these are coming from what I call virgin cases. They're not into ufology. They don't know John Lear or Jacques Vallée or Bud Hopkins or any of these names. They're not part of their background, so they're not getting this material apparently from an external source, but they're reporting very close similarities and details to these underground areas. And that's why I was interested in what other people were getting as well. And oftentimes they are reporting humans involved with aliens working in these facilities.
Are these square corners?
No.
What was the closing question?
Yes, if they were square cornered. Very often there are rooms that are human rooms with human doors and human desks within these, but the facilities seem to have been hewn out, so they're not overall square.
Dr. Muir, your question? And our first question.
My question is real simple, Dr. Turner. Could you answer your own question about the different types of aliens you see?
That I've seen personally or that we've had reported?
You have reported in your research.
All right, we've had the gray beings that I really don't consider to be aliens, considering they're always under somebody else's control, so I don't know about those. The praying mantis type or insectoid type, which is tall and has the very slim arms, very slim body, and seems to be in charge quite often. Another tall type with round eyes, with a round mouth that at least one individual has been allowed to touch, and has very spongy interior surface rather than teeth, and deeply wrinkled skin, that's a grayish-brown color. Reptilian sorts that are robust, have a scaly type exterior ranging from green to muddy brown with clawed and webbed appendages and quite functional teeth. The ball of light figures that often use either verbal or telepathic communication, and they simply look like a basketball-sized light source. the human-looking blondes, but like Dr. Boylan said, many times, and we've had at least a couple of these cases penetrate enough with and without hypnosis to see that the blonde was a screen of some other sort of being that actually, in the one case the person had memory of without hypnosis, was rather bumpy and purpley and almost slick or wet-looking in reality, and this that had used the beautiful blonde image as a cover. The short gray, the very dark, black, slim figures that are often robed or hooded. And one that the person called Mr. Green Jeans because he saw it when he was a little boy and Captain Kangaroo was on, and it was about 2 or 3 feet tall and glowed almost neon green and floated. This is the best description we could get on that.
Thank you. Next question.
I had a question for Dr. Turner. In listening to the Billy Goodman show, which you may not be familiar with, it was emanated from KVEG here in Las Vegas from 89 to 90, about almost a year's period before it got shut down because of Global 2000, the Kissinger depopulation plan. And in it, there were calls, people calling up about dismemberment of people and backs of limbs and legs and things. And one girl called up and said that she had been abducted and her left arm was growing longer than her right. And then I have a friend in a desert locality who swears that she has seen people who don't move properly, their legs bend wrong and they bend wrong, and she believes that they're surrounded by these people who are brewing drugs for a CIA-wide project.
Is there a question like, have I heard this material?
Yes. Are you familiar with any of this material?
Within the cases, and I will limit this to the virgin cases, these are people who were not into ufology before their experiences surfaced or before they begin to find out about it. We have several reports of underground facilities where bodies are processed, and we have had very similar, if not identical, descriptions of certain things, not that you would think of if you were trying to make up this description that makes it suspiciously believable that they have seen or have been induced to think they've seen the same sort of place. Whether these are real experiences or false experiences, they are multiple experiences because we have several people totally unrelated reporting these. They have seen bodies being processed, often coming from Arkansas. One said like the chickens at the Tyson Chicken Factory, and could hear the sounds of the bodies being dismembered. Others have, two other people have described seeing human bodies hanging upside down with blood being drained out of them, and one said they were stacked like cords of wood in an area. They have also, 2 different people have reported seeing humans who seem to be in a zombie-like or catatonic state working on the assembly processing area and did not seem to be doing it willingly. Yes, the underground places have come up in virgin cases, not in UFO fanatic cases, not in people who've read this material. We've also had one where 2 people were abducted to a facility they were told was a joint alien-human disease control center, and they were given inoculations. They both had partial conscious memory of this when it was over with, and one of them was so disturbed by it he wanted to seek regression help to find out what else happened. The ETs came back to him and said they warned him not to do this. He was not to look into this any further. And if he did, they would kill the other man who was with him. And they described a very peculiar situation in which this death would occur. And he told his friend what message he had received about this, and the man encouraged him to go ahead and try to find out because they were both concerned to know the truth. He did seek regression on the first time when he got back to the state where he lived with this other man. The man was in the hospital and did die within 24 hours in the most bizarre situation that was not a medically induced problem at all, and it matched exactly what the ETs had warned his friend would happen to him. if he did seek regression. I know that's the horror stories nobody wants to hear, nobody wants to talk about, and they're not politically acceptable, but these cases are as valid as any other case. Whether there is validity across the board, that's something you're going to have to decide.
Dr. Boyle,
Now, there are many instances, and I have investigated people who have had some experiences in some of these underground facilities, and they're not very nice experiences. And they have involved certain kinds of extraterrestrials, and according to their testimony, humans. And it's the humans that are doing the bad stuff. Not that they're not in some kind of collaboration, but I want us to make sure that if we get into this wild stuff, that we realize that it may not be anything but it's all typical, and it may be something that we as humans need to ourselves face, because it's not, no, these people are being paid out of black budgets. And I think it's time that perhaps one of our new presidents is encouraged to look into some of the things that our own humans are doing, and making it appear in many instances to be alien malfeasances. I would also echo that we don't talk about it very much because the evidence is a little bit fragmented, but it's getting more solid. And that evidence that there is one group of what Dr. Boyle calls the low life of the universe is working with some of the low life of the U.S. government. And who they are, of course, they won't tell you. They don't even. But there's a $35 billion black budget, and that's enough to cover a lot of activities.